Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargav. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. The government's expenditure on account of COVID healthcare, on account of defense, on account of the need to invest in infrastructure and to give fiscal stimulus has been rising month after month. And at this time, unfortunately, its tax collections have not been up to the mark. And because of that, the government treasury has remained empty. The government now needs to sell its stakes in public sector enterprises. It needs to disinvest. It needs to privatize. Not just because it needs funds, but also if the government privatizes these PSUs, at least they will stop bleeding the public money that they do year after year on account of the huge losses that they incur. The central government has about 200 public sector enterprises. Out of those, 55 are listed. And on a combined aggregate basis, these entire 200 public sector enterprises give us a negative return on investment on the giant public money which is invested in these 200 public sector enterprises. Sadly, even the listed public sector enterprises do not add to our public wealth, they only erode it. The BSE Public Sector Enterprises Index, the PSU index, was set up sometime in January 2008. And since then, it has not gone up, it has gone down, implying that market capitalization of the listed PSUs has actually gone down. And since 2008 to 2021, it has gone down by 40%. On the other hand, the Sensex has gone up a few multiple times, but the BSE PSU index has eroded. Because of that, the PSU stock prices are at a historical low at a time when the Sensex has been at a historical high. The fact is that investors do not have confidence in their investments in the public sector enterprises. Take the case like the BankX index of public sector banks. The index has actually gone down while the BSE Sensex has been going up. And so much is the erosion of capital that while in the last decade, almost 10 lakh crores were reinvested by the government in public sector banks. Against that, the total market capitalization of public sector banks today is just 4 lakh crores. That's the kind of wealth that they have eroded. This year, the government's target for receipts from disinvestment and privatization was to the tune of 2 lakh 10,000 crores. And against that, when we are at the threshold of the next budget, the government has managed to collect just about 18,000 crores. Out of that, 13,000 crores have come by way of offer of sale Bharat Dynamics, Hindustan Aeronautics, and IRCTC. Big ticket sales and privatization like that of Air India, BPCL, and a part of LIC have just not materialized. They have not managed to sell them. And that reflects why, against a target of 2 lakh 10,000 crores, the collection so far is just a mere 18,000 crores. It cannot be denied that public sector enterprises of India have been wealth destroyers. They have destroyed wealth sizably, and it is in the interest of the country that they get privatized, they get disinvested. The government needs to ramp up its receipts on account of sale of public sector enterprises and disinvestments in a major way. And while the government needs to generate receipts on account of disinvestment and privatization in a big way, the fact is that the soft option, the sham of an option that it exercised to do so in the years 2018 and 2019 is actually no longer available. And that sham option was compelling one PSU to buy another in order to meet the disinvestment target of the government. It is because of that ONGC bought HPCL for 37,400 crores. PFC, Power Finance Corporation, bought the REC for 14,000 crores, and the ports together bought the Dredging Corporation of India for 1,400 crores. It was one PSU buying another. There was no disinvestment. There was no true privatization, as we call it. That option is no longer there, because if it was there, by now BPCL would have been privatized or disinvested, and so would have been the case of IDBI Bank. While disinvestment does not take off, and the enterprises continue to be owned and managed by the government, PSUs continue to bleed losses in a big way. In just the year 2018, 19, the combined losses of Air India, BSNL and MTNL were about 27,000 crores. And while these kind of losses continue, even on account of disinvestment proceeds, the government truly does not get a surplus, it incurs a deficit. This year, the government may have received 13,000 crores on account of the 4 offers of sale. But against this, it has invested over 1 lakh crores in bankrupt public sector banks in order to recapitalize them. The net result, as far as the government is concerned on account of disinvestment, is a deficit, a negative figure. And unless that is not plugged, we will see a drain on public finances. The final frontier, according to us, for the government to be able to raise funds is disinvestment. Apart from resorting to any kind of an indiscriminate borrowing, which the government has prudently refrained from doing so far. Thus, the government needs to urgently get into the business of privatizing and disinvesting. As per a certain estimate, at the present valuation, even if the government brings down its holding in listed public sector enterprises to 26%, the government would get about 2.8 lakh crores. And if it did that, in the case of unlisted enterprises of the government, it would be able to raise 1.10 lakh crores. That's the kind of amount that can be raised, and the government needs to do it urgently. Perhaps it is because of these reasons that in May 2020, the finance minister, as part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, announced that the government is going to formulate a PSU policy very soon. The FM at that time in May 20 did not say what the policy is. She said it is going to be formulated, but she said that the government is going to classify PSUs as strategic PSUs and non-strategic PSUs. And she said that the government will maximum own up to 4 PSUs in a strategic sector, and all PSUs in a non-strategic sector, she said, are going to be privatized. That was a bold announcement, but the policy was not announced. It was yet to be formulated. Reports say that the cabinet yesterday has approved a PSU policy, but it has not been announced. It is expected to be announced by the finance minister when she announces the budget on the 1st of February. It appears from the announcement that the PSU policy which has been formulated by the cabinet is a path-breaking one. While we wait for it to be announced, we would certainly like to say that such a policy, in order to succeed, needs to be realistic. It needs to factor in certain ground realities, which the government, for some strange reasons, has not done so whenever any privatization or disinvestment proposal was announced. And what are those factors to be considered in order to ensure that any privatization initiative or disinvestment is a success? The first thing that we have been seeing is that there has been huge political opposition and opposition by militant trade unions to any proposal of the government to privatize public sector enterprises. The government will need to take them into confidence. The government will need to adopt an inclusive approach in order to ensure that they are also on board, such that they cooperate in the proposal for privatization or disinvestment, and that it does not fall flat. The second, of course, is unrealistic valuations and offers. The government, perhaps out of political diffidence, has been making offers which are based on extremely unrealistic valuations. At one time, it was expecting that the loss-making Air India, which is saddled with over 45,000 crores of debt, will be sold for about 50,000 crores. The entire valuation was unrealistic. It did not at that time even get a single bid. So if the government wants to sell a loss-making entity, it will need to realize that the valuation and the offer has to be realistic. If that is not done, then the best public policy is bound to fail, because an unrealistic valuation is not going to be accepted by the market investors. One of the reasons why the offers and the valuations go unrealistic is the government does not do its homework and preparation study properly. Take the case of BPCL. A privatization of BPCL has been announced. After it was announced, the government said that it is not going to include Numaligarh refinery as part of the privatization of BPCL. And Numaligarh refinery happens to be one of the prized assets of BPCL. Immediately, investor interest fell down. So the government needs to do its homework properly, and that would ensure that the valuation is correct, the offer that it makes is correct. The next reason we see why these public disinvestment and privatization offers fail is very often the government is itself unwilling to give up control of a public sector enterprise. A public sector enterprise is like a pocket burrow of a Neta, and if the Neta doesn't want to let it go, it is not going to result in any kind of a privatization or sale. The next obstacle which comes as a deal breaker very often is the government puts a condition that anybody who takes over a public sector enterprise cannot retrench the staff. Most of these enterprises have got excess labor, excess workforce, and that makes them loss making and unprofitable. And any incoming investor is bound to want to retrench them. They can certainly be given a golden handshake to ensure that they are not thrown out, but they will have to be retrenched. The government puts a condition that you can't do that. That was one of the conditions which even went in Air India. And in the very initial phase, Air India never did get any buyers. The next confusion that comes in most of the public sector enterprises is that their borrowings are very often guaranteed by the government. And when a private sector entrepreneur or investor comes in, of course, the government can't guarantee the debt. Sometimes it's seen that the government has been unable to untangle this, and that becomes a deterring factor or a factor which comes in the way for disinvestment or privatization. Many a public sector enterprise depends on the government for business. And it is presumed that once it is privatized, the government business might not come. That means valuation will fall. That does not get factored in. And that results in no offers coming, even if the government is serious about privatizing that particular enterprise. The fact of the matter is that a PSU policy will not work unless it is implemented in a very realistic manner. The fact also is that the government badly needs money to invest, it needs money to spend, it needs to pump prime the economy. And for that, privatization and disinvestment seems to be one of the final frontier offers before the government, apart from indulging in borrowing. You must also look at disinvestment and privatization as an opportunity to convert an unproductive, unprofitable asset of the government into a productive and profitable asset of the nation. That is the opportunity. And if that is done, the economy will only do better. The hindrance that we really see in this entire effort of the government in coming up with a PSU policy is perhaps that, like its other initiatives, it might just not adopt an inclusive approach. If it does not do that, you can certainly expect that even if the policy is good, it's not going to really succeed. This is Akhilesh Bhargav signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Hello everyone. HW News English is 2 years old now. When we started this venture, we promised ourselves one thing, that news should remain free, because right to know is the right of every Indian. But to keep news free for everyone, we need support from some of you. And thus we have rolled out membership on our YouTube channel HW News English. But mind you, the membership is completely voluntary. The programs that we were doing earlier, that we are doing now, will continue to remain free. First level is a basic level. Here, you can be our supporter by paying Rs 199 per month. This membership gives you certain perks and benefits. The perks include unique badges in front of your name, a live show from Mr. Sujit Nair and from Mr. Akhilesh Bhargava per month for our members. You can also vote in some exclusive members-only polls. Now the second level is Super Supporter. Here you can be our Super Supporter by paying Rs 3,999 per month. This membership will include every perk that comes with basic level. Additionally, our Super Supporters can be a part of a WhatsApp group where we can have discussions and suggestions on various topics. The second perk includes a gift pack with our merchandise. And the third perk is a Google Meet with Mr. Sujit Nair, where you can join the meet and ask your questions to Mr. Nair face to face. Lastly, if you like, we would give a shout out to our super supporters in our programs. So, hope to see you soon with our badges.